Welcome to another OU Insider Under the Visor YouTube Live. My name is Brandon Drumm. I'm here with Parker Thune. Spencer Forsythe is running all the tech and on the board, and we're here to talk about springtime football in Oklahoma. They have now accomplished five practices and a mini scrimmage. On Saturday, they have rescheduled this week's last practice for tomorrow because it was originally scheduled for Friday evening. Instead, everybody's going to go down, it sounds like, for Peyton Bowen's sister's funeral, from my understanding. So all the coaches, players that are going to go, all that type of stuff. So it is a family deal. It's a team deal, and they will be in there to support the Bowen family, Peyton, Eli, all those that are obviously torn up over this situation, and rightfully so. It's an awful situation. So prayers and thoughts out to the Bowen family. All right. Parker. It is spring. There's been a big junior day. There's been 5 practices now. And I think the reigning thought so far has to be that confidence is weird with this team. A 6-7 team is now pretending, or they have a confidence of like a team that's undefeated last year. It's an odd dichotomy on how they have, I guess, grown in the last 3 or 4 months. And I guess when you've recruited like they did, got the transfer portals the way they did. And I talked to somebody, you know who I talked to, because I talked to you about, I texted you about it last night. I talked to this person for like 30 minutes last night. Their exact words to me was, they're not going to have the numbers going into recruiting this year. One, because 25 man is set. Like, there's no, you can sign whatever. You have to sign off of your numbers now. You can't just go sign over. So everybody's got to start dwindling back down to 85. And Oklahoma hasn't been that far over 85, or they've been hovering around it the whole time, because they didn't want to get caught by having to cut a whole bunch of people that didn't need cut when time come for this. But they said the turnover rate from here on out will be exceedingly lower than what Oklahoma has seen in the past 2 cycles as far as transfers go. They said they expect between 80 and 90% of the team to stick from here on out. That's interesting to me. 5 practices in, and they're calling their shot. And if this person I talked to called their shot, they know what they're talking about.
They do. But here's why it makes a lot of sense to me, Brandon, is because you look at what where Brent Venables came from at Clemson. That is not a team that loses guys to the portal with great frequency. They will lose 3 or 4 every offseason. And in the day and age of college football that we are in right now, that's a pretty remarkable thing, especially when you're competing on the level that Clemson has competed at over the past decade. If you're only losing 3 or 4 guys to the portal every offseason, you're doing something right when it comes to establishing your culture and getting guys to buy in, even if they're not seeing the field right this second. So I'm not shocked to hear that is the expectation within the walls of the Switzer Center, is that you're going to have tremendous retention year to year, because obviously, and I don't know if it's been said explicitly, but what Brent Venables is trying to build at Oklahoma isn't necessarily an identical replica of what Dabo Swinney has built at Clemson, but there are a ton of similarities, and that's going to be one of them.
Absolutely. I think that was something that obviously Brent Venables wanted to have accomplished when he got to Norman. Was, look, he made it clear in the first time we ever met with him, right? Like, after his introduction, we went up to that weird area that we had never been to do the post game. And he sat there at that table and he answered all of our questions, right? Like, And one of the first things he said is, we are not going to rely solely on the transfer portal. Now, obviously, he had to take that back after he saw what he saw with the Oklahoma roster and what needed revamped. And so he's been working the last 12 months along with his staff to revamp it. And to their credit, what they've accomplished in 12 months, like I get 6 and 7. That crap sucked last year. Like they dropped a huge turd on the 50-yard line of a season. And well, they did. But in the midst of all that, they were still able to continue to revamp the roster to where you talk to staffers, you talk to people around the program, and they're like, this is the roster that they love and they think is going to win a lot of ball games. The one thing they'll continue to say, and they harp on over and over and over, and we see it out there, and we've talked about it in our OU Insider Notes, is depth on the defensive line continues to be something that needs massaged, coached up, everything. Like it needs to be better. And so the first team, they feel really confident. And I know people are going to hate on this comment right here. So I'm going to start dodging shoes like I'm George Bush in Saudi Arabia. I don't know if you've seen that GIF where he like dodges the shoes, but it's pretty funny. So they are talking up like Isaiah Coe having a big spring, right? They're talking up Jordan Kelly having a big spring. They're talking up Ethan Downs having a big spring. Jonah Laulu having a big spring. Like names that OU fans are like pulling their hair out, but they're also talking about PJ Adebawore, R. Mason Thomas, and a couple other guys that, and even Reggie Grunt, I know, look, dodging, like having decent springs. So they feel good about those first 6, 7 guys. It's after those 6 or 7 guys that they're like, yo, we need work. Now, I will say this. They like what they feel they have coming up. I think Jacob Daniels, right? Is his name right? Jacob Daniels, right? The D lineman, correct?
Jacob Lacey?
Jacob Lacey. God, Jacob Daniels. Jacob Lacey. Obviously, Derek LeBlanc. They like those 2 guys a lot. But I think they need to continue to see growth. They need to get healthy. I think when Kelvin Gilliam comes back, they're going to like that. They think Grayson Haltom has a chance to be really good, but he needs to put on a little bit more weight, just not a lot, like 10 more pounds, and they'll feel a lot more comfortable with him. So there's those little things that they're still working on to get to where they need to be, but they feel great about linebacker. They feel great about corner, and they feel really good about the safety position if they can stay healthy. And let's just say there's some nicks and bruises that could be significant that could be announced down the line. We're not going to get into all that just because, but and they aren't starters, but there's depth guys that are nicked and banged up. So in the secondary. So, but again, Parker, do you agree with that assessment that so far, if they can just get that defensive line depth, if they can get the depth going, do you feel like they can take a huge jump defensively?
I think they certainly can take a huge jump defensively, and that's the expectation that people have, is that jump is going to take place for this defense. But I think it isn't just about one position group. It isn't just about one starting battle. It's not about one thing. It's about the whole picture for Oklahoma. They need to improve at all 3 levels, and they will as these guys mature within the scheme and become more accommodated to all of the nuances of Brent Venables' defense. And that's what people need to understand, right? You take, for example, a guy like Ethan Downs a season ago, who was second team all Big 12. And there are some people, because I was interacting with some of these people today on the radio, People that cannot fathom a world in which a competent Oklahoma defense has Ethan Downs starting at defensive end next year. And the way I look at it right now, Brandon, it's as if half this fan base has forgotten that the same players can get a lot better over the course of an offseason. So the Ethan Downs that you saw last year, even though he was pretty dang good, in my opinion,
second team all Big 12.
Exactly. But even so, he might be a whole lot better in 2023 than he was in 2022. The same Reggie Grimes that you saw in 2022 might not be the same Reggie Grimes that you see in 2023. I know there are guys in this defense, right? And another guy that's earning a lot of buzz, I think you might have mentioned his name, but another guy that's earning some positive reviews for his performance thus far in spring is Justin Harrington, right? Right. And it's a guy like that my perspective on it is I have to see it to believe it on Saturdays in the fall at a certain point with a guy like that. But even so, there are guys that it seems have been written off by many of these fans. And I think that's altogether premature. Yes, it's understandable that you'd be excited about some of the youngsters and some of the guys that are quite obviously poised to make a quantum leap, the likes of an R. Mason Thomas, for instance. But it's not out of the question that Reggie Grimes, for instance, is playing a big role for Oklahoma in 2023. Here's what I know. If he is playing a big role for Oklahoma in 2023, it's because he did make a quantum leap. And if he does not make a quantum leap, he's not going to see the field because there are plenty of alternatives at that position, i.e. Rondell Bothroyd, Marcus Stripling, Adebawore himself, R. Mason Thomas, Trace Ford coming in from Oklahoma State. And so my point therein is that whoever is on the field for Oklahoma, given how much more depth you have in 2023 than you had in 2022, will have earned those snaps. And there is not really a concern in my eyes about throwing a guy to the Wolves who isn't necessarily prepared for the responsibility that's going to be placed on his shoulders, because you look at the linebacker room last year for Oklahoma. There are plenty that would say, you know what, Oklahoma probably wasn't in the best position trotting out David Agwebu for 90 snaps a game. And I'd agree with that, but there wasn't really a viable alternative. And so now that you have viable alternatives to a lot of these guys that are incumbents coming back, they're only going to play if they earn it.
Oh yeah. But it is, it's like a fan thing. Even media, we're guilty. We're prisoners of the moment. We're prisoners of, what we saw last year. I'm trying to think of a prime example of somebody that made just a massive jump from year one to year two at Oklahoma, or just at some point in their career just took off. Does anybody remember Price Macon in 2010? Came in kind of unheralded a little bit, struggled to get on the field. Does anybody remember the last half of the year, and in particular, the type of game that he had in the Big 12 title game versus Nebraska? Where he had like 3 sacks, 4 tackles for losses. I don't know his exact stat line, but it was a performance I still remember to this day. And my point is players can do that. RJ Washington. Anybody remember RJ Washington, the 5-star out of Keller High School? Anybody? Well, he's the type of guy that came in 5-star, one of the top players in the country, and just struggled, and then finally had a decent year. After a few years at Oklahoma, finally just kind of came out of his shell. He never was an NFL type guy, but he had the type of year that you would expect from a player of his ilk. So, I don't know, man. Like, it, to us as people that cover, into fans, I get that sometimes you're just like, well, they were bad last year, they shouldn't play this year. Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, yes, I know people are saying RJ was a bust, but he was. he was career as a whole, because he was supposed to be like the second coming of everything when he came in. But he actually played somewhat decent his last year, and good enough to help Oklahoma quite a bit. He wasn't the star on the team by any means. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying he got significantly better than being the fourth string guy that he was for so long in his career. So, I mean, it just, I don't know. People get better, and the hate that Downs gets after a second team All Big 12, I get he didn't have enough sacks, 4.5. Needs to do a lot more, right? We all agree with that. I do understand some of the Grimes stuff, because he just was like a ghost sometimes last year. You agree with that, Parks, right?
Certainly.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
like
fair.
you would agree with that, right? Like, yeah. So, I mean, it's just, I don't know, man. I think we over exaggerated is what I'm saying sometimes, of just how bad people really were. The defense was bad, was really bad, but they were bad as a whole. Individually, I thought Downs was one of the better players on the defense. Now, that's not saying much considering how bad the defense was last year, but he was still one of the better players. They have to get better up front as a collective group, period. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like, if they don't, they may improve defensively, but you're probably looking at more of what you saw from Oklahoma in 2021, and not what you were supposed to see from a Brent Venables defense. Does that make sense? Like, you're still going to give up plays. You're still going to give up points. The fact is I don't know if they're going to have the guy that can save their butt at quarterback. Who are some of the guys you've heard stand out?
I mean, I mentioned one in Justin Harrington. Seems like we're going on year 4. That dude just lighting it up in spring ball, right? And so you do have to take everything with a grain of salt to a certain extent. We're talking about guys that flash on the practice field. But look, all indications are that Billy Bowman's going to be a dude, and he already is. But if that dude can take another step from where he was last year, you're talking about a potential All-American, in my opinion. That's how good Billy Bowman can be. Saw Gentry Williams out on the field today at the tail end of practice, taking extra reps. So that's a guy, obviously people were concerned about his status, concerned about the medical episode that he had, but he's out working again. That's encouraging to see. The two freshman running backs, Caleb Hicks, Dalen Smothers. I'm excited about the future of the Oklahoma backfield, not just with the tandem of Gavin Sawchuk and Javante Barnes as the head honchos at the moment, but man, Hicks does not look like a true freshman the way that he is beefed up, and certainly looks like a guy that's been in a collegiate strength and conditioning program for longer than 3 months. I'll put it to you that way. And Dalen Smothers, he's a guy that isn't quite as developed right now, but is a lot more lightning than thunder. So I think those two, I don't know if they have quite the ceiling that Barnes and Sawchuk have as a tandem, but I'm excited to see how those two develop. And the nice thing about where the Oklahoma backfield is right now is you don't need those guys' development to get pushed any further than it's going to go just naturally. And you're not going to need to get those guys game ready in 2023. At least I don't think so. You shouldn't, unless injury befalls that room. And I like Nick Anderson a lot. Not going to stop saying it. I think that's a guy that's poised to inherit a big role.
He's going to have to beat out Andrew Anthony.
And Andrew Anthony is and with the production that he had at Michigan, it was good. Modest,
really,
right?
Really good spring.
It was modest, but if he takes the jump and if he can be that deep threat, if he can prove to be the field stretcher that Marvin Mims was for this program the last few years, then he's going to see the field, because I think that's the one question mark that you have with Mims' departure is who's going to be the downfield guy. And it's pretty wide open in that regard. Andrell Anthony is as capable as anybody of being that in the Oklahoma offense. I'm trying to think defensively. R. Mason Thomas looks really good, man. Really, really good. And we got to talk to Miguel Chavis tonight. He is very excited to see what R. Mason Thomas is going to do this fall as a sophomore. As far as the secondary goes, as far as the linebackers go, again, I mentioned Harrington's a guy that stands out. Obviously, Desan McCullough stands out. Danny Stutzman, not going to shock anybody to hear that dude looks really impressive, but he does. In the secondary, Reggie Pearson's a guy that's turning heads, and he's a sixth-year senior who's played a ton of Power 5 football. So again, that is not too terribly surprising, but those are the guys that you want to be hearing good things about in spring ball, because come fall, those are the guys that, at least according to what we can project right now, are going to be the guys that are taking a lot of snaps.
Yeah. No, for me, I've heard for the most part, Andrew Anthony is one that I've heard just has made plays and made big plays. I actually asked somebody the other day who they thought would be the third receiver. And I was literally told Andrew Anthony or LV Bunkley Shelton. They said both those guys have had big springs. They have speed. They're able to stretch the field. And they're guys that just add a lot to what they enjoy doing offensively. Now, obviously, they brought up Nick Anderson and Jaden Gibson and said, look, those two are going to play. They're going to be in the rotation. They're going to get reps. They're going to get snaps in games, and they're going to make some plays. They just weren't sure that they're the big play guy just yet, that potentially those two guys could be. And that comes with depth and age and the fact that those two have been playing college football longer than Nick Anderson and Jaden Gibson. Having said that, there's still like 7 months, like 6 months or whatever between now, or was it 5 months now? But no, it's almost 4, right? No, it's 5. It's 5 months. 5 months between now and the start of football season. So a lot can change. A lot can happen. The light bulb can come on with somebody and things can be drastically different for a Nick Anderson or Jaden Gibson or somebody of that ilk. And, you still don't have the Pettaways of the world on campus. And that's going to change some things up, obviously, if he is what we all think he is at the wide receiver position. Obviously, Jackson Arnold has been a name that's been thrown out there quite a bit. And look, people need to temper your expectations here, but I'm going to say what I was told. Okay. So don't think that he's going to be beating out Dylan Gabriel just because of what I'm about to say. Not happening. At least not right now. I would be shocked if it happened as we sit here and talk at the end of March. If things continue to progress at this rate, talk to me in June or July. Maybe I'll be on board with that idea. But I had one person tell me that was around during the Caleb Williams era, after one spring mini scrimmage, said he does a lot of things that Caleb was doing when he first showed up to campus. Just making plays with his feet, moving around, throwing in different arm slots, throwing ropes on different arm slots, and just doing things that Caleb was doing where you knew that he was mobile, but you're shocked when he gets out there and escapes the pocket and does the things that he does. And he essentially is making big plays down the field, and he's taking shots. And those shots are what obviously Levy's offense is predicated on, right? Like run, take a big shot downfield. Run, hit the tight end over the middle, run, now take a big shot down the field. Like that is essentially what the offense is about. And that's what makes Jackson fit what they're doing and what they're going to do moving forward. So he's made a lot of plays so far. He had the first real live thing they did. He struggled immensely. I was told, like, just was moving fast, just was rushing through things, wasn't getting his feet set, wasn't doing what we needed to do. But they said that mini scrimmage on Saturday was like, whoa. And then I had two people say, if he does that every scrimmage, it's going to be hard for him not to be the guy. I asked, do they expect that? And they said, no, Dylan's Dylan. Dylan makes plays. Dylan does exactly what he's supposed to do. Dylan puts points on the board. They said that first team O was just clicking under Dylan Gabriel. So they don't expect that to happen, but it made them feel really comfortable with what they have at the 2 spot potentially moving forward that they didn't feel comfortable about last year. So that's good news. Another guy that's been standing out, nobody's talked about, is Jake Taylor at the right tackle spot. He's playing right tackle right now. He's moving inside and outside, and they think he has a chance to add some very, very solid depth. There's not a lot of talk of him starting just yet, and that's understandable with who they have at left tackle and Sexton and Rouse, and obviously Guyton at right tackle. But as somebody that can rotate at the guard and tackle position, they think he has a chance to be special. So there's that as well. And I can tell you from just the observation that we've had at practice, Parker, you probably saw it as well. Beatonbow rides the crap out of Jake Taylor. Like, he's on him because he knows how good he can be. You can tell that everything he wants him to do, everything's so perfect. And it's because they have such high expectations for him. And the next thing you know, the next rep, Taylor does it perfectly. So there's high expectations there for him. Look, Sawchuk and Barnes are going to be the dudes with Major. I think Major's going to get some reps. All 3 of those guys their name keep swinging around over and over. And we keep hearing Austin Stogner. Obviously, depth, Parker, has a lot to do with it, but he's so good. And talk about lucking into something. You leave Braden Willis. Just how about the guy that was beating him out that he couldn't start over returning?
Well, and that was going to be the big question mark for this offense going into 2023, wasn't it? Because you never worry about the wide receivers. You got an incumbent quarterback. You got plenty of offensive linemen that are capable of filling the void left by your graduating starters and Anton Harrison, Chris Murray, and Wanya Morris. So you weren't really worried there. But the big question was, okay, who plays tight end? We knew they were going to get a portal guy. We knew that very early on. I think September was the earliest that I had reported. Yeah, OU's already planning on taking a portal tight end at the end of the season. And the guy that fell into their lap, man, pretty much resolved every single question we had about that position group in 2023, because I love Caden Helms. I like Jason Llewellyn a lot too, man. But to ask one of those two to fill Braden Willis's shoes in year 2 on campus at Oklahoma, that was going to be a tall task. Austin Stogner is a guy that I've said it before, this is absolutely no disrespect to Braden Willis at all, because that dude's a hoss and he's going to play NFL football. Austin Stogner all around is better than Braden Willis. And I think now he steps into a situation at Oklahoma where he finally gets the chance to prove it. He finally gets a chance to be the guy at that position, because in his 3 years at Oklahoma before he transferred to South Carolina, he was always splitting snaps with somebody, whether it was Willis or Jeremiah Hall or Lee Morris towards the tail end of his Oklahoma career. Austin Stogner never really had the opportunity to shine as the guy at the tight end H-back position. Now that opportunity has presented itself in his 5th year of college football, and I think he's poised to take advantage in a big, big way.
Yeah, he had Calcaterra as a freshman too. People forget about that until he dinged his head up against Kansas 4 games in. And that's where Austin ended up being the guy when they played Texas that day. And then essentially had the coming out party a couple weeks later against Baylor. A lot of people don't remember that. Like, he had 2 touchdowns against Baylor as a freshman, his dad's alma mater. Mongo Parker wanted us to give a shout out to Ricardo LeBlanc. What's going on, Ricardo? And does Tyler Parker like covered wagons? Obviously, talking about the 2025 defensive tackle out of Irvine, California. I think it's Crean Lutheran or something to that extent. He did that vlog that everybody's hyped up about, that, when he took the visit, he got a lot of behind the scenes, got some scrimmage plays that he put up there and all that type of stuff. He's 6 foot, 300 pounds. He doesn't have an Oklahoma offer yet. Now, he looks like a hoss, and I'm sure he's going to be a really good player. I think his height is something that Oklahoma's probably looking at, I would assume. I haven't really dove into him just yet, being 2025. But if he's going to take a visit with no offer, I'm going to assume, Parker, that he will like Oklahoma when an offer is extended. Just something I'm gathering right now. I don't know. Your thoughts?
No, you're right. You're right. He will. I'd keep an
Yep.
eye on that one.
Yep, for sure. Trying to see if there's any questions in the chat today, but there's a lot of, Chris Henson, I'm not wearing a robe. I'm wearing a cardigan. You missed out on it if you showed up late. People are already talking about me looking like Big Lebowski. So, and I said, that's just their opinion, man. So if anybody's watching a movie, you get the reference. That's just like your opinion, man. What about the D lineman from Georgia? That is a very vague statement in question there, Jimmy Satterfield. There's a lot of D linemen from Georgia. Evan Brown Schuler's probably going to Clemson.
Yeah, definitely going to Clemson. I would assume he's talking about Edric Houston, Brandon.
Oh, well, he's probably going to take an official visit to Oklahoma. I think that's the reigning thought there. Ironically, Mustang's defensive coordinator, or former defensive coordinator, Sam Dollar, actually interviewed at Buford here just recently. But he will now be Houston County's co-DC down in Georgia after taking the job a couple days ago at Houston County, where they are loaded. So there'll be an Oklahoma connection down there in Georgia again, down there in Warner Robins, actually, is where it's at. He's talking about King Joseph. He's actually going to the Under Armour camp this weekend in LA. I was going to go to that, but after my travels, I'm going to plant my happy butt here in Oklahoma for one weekend before April hits, and I will not be in Oklahoma for a while. So, David Stone is another guy people are asking about. Oklahoma leads. He's visited Miami. The Michigan State thing, like, we'll see. I just don't buy it. I refuse to buy it, actually, just because when all is said and done, you see the way he's tweeting, everything that he's tweeted lately with commits and people visiting. It's been Oklahoma. You haven't seen a lot of Michigan State stuff out there. But D Stone's a really good salesperson. Like, he plays the game really well. He has the fan bases fighting amongst themselves and each other over him. And that's exactly what he wants. That's how you build a brand. But at the end of the day, his relationship with Coach Bates, the fact that he's come end of April, guess where he's going to be? From the end of April till the beginning of or the middle of July. Where will he be, Parker?
I'm sorry, what now?
David Stone. Where will he be? The end of April to the middle of July. Where will he be?
Okay, he'll be home in Oklahoma.
And he stays with who? His sister in
Family?
Norman. Well, his sister in Norman. So he's essentially on campus all the time. He talks about it, how he doesn't tweet when he's in Norman because he's there so much. It just doesn't make sense for him to do so. So I still like the crystal ball for Oklahoma. Now, I think there's a lot of teams out there. I think Ohio State, obviously. I think Michigan State, Oklahoma, and I'm trying to think of the other one that would get an official for sure. That's 3. Who would be the 4th? LSU, probably. LSU. People talk about A&M, but I'm not sure they're going to get an official. Not yet. He doesn't really talk all them up that much. Parker, here, I'll let you go. Peyton Pierce.
Peyton Pierce, I know there's a lot of Ohio State buzz. I know there is, but
Oh, yeah.
I've repeatedly compared this one to Gentry Williams. And I think in the end, Peyton Pierce ends up at Oklahoma because there's too many reasons for him not to say yes to, or wait, I got to figure out how my brain's tied in knots now. It just makes too much sense. And I think that's part of the reason why there's been buzz for so many other schools other than Oklahoma over the last few months, whether Notre Dame or Ohio State or even Wisconsin, right? I think you get to a certain point and a kid like that with as many Oklahoma ties as he has, you're starting to look for a reason not to go to Oklahoma. And I think that was kind of the frame of mind that Gentry Williams was in for a while. But guess what? In the end, his heart won out and his heart led him back to Oklahoma. I really do think that especially once Peyton Pierce takes his official visit to Oklahoma, that's going to be his similar experience because we're still talking about a guy that grew up an Oklahoma fan, grew up going to the Red River Showdown at the Cotton Bowl and sitting south of the 50. And not only that, a guy that always aspired to go play for Brent Venables, originally at Clemson, but obviously most recently at Oklahoma. So I do not want to disavow Ohio State standing there because they are a real threat. And I believe I was the first to report that back in mid-February, shortly after James Laurinaitis had been hired on staff at his alma mater in Columbus. And I'd gone down to Lovejoy to talk to Peyton in person, and he'd been very open about it. He said, look, I've got a lot of interest in Ohio State because James Laurinaitis is my guy. I've already booked an official visit up there, and he has. It's his only scheduled official visit right now is to Ohio State. Now, he's in the process of scheduling a few more. OU will be one of those. But I just find it very, very hard to believe that with everything pulling Peyton Pierce to Oklahoma, that's not where he ends up in the end. So not really worried there. Somebody in the chat asked, is
Drew Martin says Hawkins is a coin flip with TCU.
Well, you know where Hawkins was today? On the practice field in Norman, Oklahoma. So
dude, this guy's got to be a troll, right? Like
Drew Martin.
His comments are hilarious.
He's at the very least a contrarian. Regardless, Michael Hawkins has now visited Oklahoma 8 times in 8 months. He's been to TCU twice. So all I'm saying is, and keep in mind, right now we're 10 days away from his commitment date. 10 days. So the fact that he's still showing up to OU, the fact that OU is a lot further down the road from his house than TCU is in Fort Worth, that leaves me feeling pretty good about where Oklahoma stands. And listen, you talk to anybody that knows Michael Hawkins, any of his peers, any of the people that spend a great deal of time around him, the expectation is that it's going to be Oklahoma on April 8th. Mm-hmm. That is the unanimous and full expectation, is that he's going to be in Oklahoma sooner. So I'm going to his commitment ceremony on April 8th. And after Brandon's ordeal at the David Hicks commitment ceremony last fall, I know better than to take anything for granted with 100% certainty in the world of recruiting, even if you already have the interview done. But I would not be going that far out of my way, especially having to drive 9 hours immediately after that to get back home to Nebraska for Easter. I would not be going that far out of my way if I believed the kid was going to commit to TCU.
There you go.
Actually, that's not true. I probably would, just because I've gotten so close with him and his dad over the course of the last couple of years. Because I met Michael when he had one college offer, so I've been privy to the whole process for him, and it's been fun to watch it all unfold. But again, I'm not showing up to his commitment ceremony on April 8th with the expectation that he's going to be a TCU Horned Frog.
I'll say this. I mean, he could shock, I guess. Very well. I mean, I've had that happen twice, so whatever. Yeah. Here's the deal. I know they expect Haas Haney to announce here in the next week or two. That's the expectation, I was told, for TCU. So, I mean, we'll see. It'd be crazy if Hawkins, went, and I was told TCU has Haas Haney and Hawkins 1A, 1B on their board. So I don't know. Interestingly enough, as you said, they were on campus, and I know Oklahoma feels really good about things at this point. That's what I've been told by multiple people. So we'll see. I mean, there's another 10 days for this to play out, and things could change. I know we say that all the time, and people kind of think it's an out, but it's recruiting. I've seen things change in a matter of 30 minutes. Literally.
Yes.
Literally. So it is what it is. Let's see here. Trying to find, okay. Is Brandon the one behind Parker's Balls? I don't even know what that is, so probably not.
Oh, my balls have a Twitter account now. Have you not seen this?
I have not. Sorry.
Yes, there is a Twitter account called @Parker's Balls.
Interesting.
So
Yeah, interesting. Before we go here, let's see if we can find a few more. Does Georgia lead for Williams Winery?
Does Georgia lead? No.
He
no, they
visited Georgia, so that's why the question.
Yeah. Georgia does not lead right now. Oklahoma still leads that race. And look, I imagine we're going to get a lot of questions about Will Nwaneri because he's taking a lot of visits over the next month. OU still leads right now, and I feel really good about OU's chances. I also feel, if I'm being completely honest, if there's a school that's going to wreak havoc on OU's best laid plans with Will Nwaneri, I still think it's going to be either Missouri or Nebraska, man.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because I think the kid only has a certain radius from home that he's willing to play within. It's kind of a homebody kid that likes familiarity. And so with Nebraska 3 hours up the road, he's been there multiple times, and that's kind of a school that he's been warming to. I still think everything makes so much sense for him in Norman, though. That's why I put the crystal ball in. And look, he's one of those guys that, and I can point to probably 5 or 6 right now in this 2024 class that I would say, were it not for Brent Venables' stringent visit policy, and were it not also for Will Nwaneri's influences that are around him in terms of people that want to make sure he is thorough with the process, were it not for those factors, I think there's a decent chance the kid would already be committed to Oklahoma.
Yeah, that's probably true. Outside of Hawkins, who do you think the next commit's going to be? Offense, one on offense, one on defense.
Here's the thing. I don't know if OU gets a commitment from Aaron Flowers on April 7th. I'll tell you one thing, I'm probably not going to budge from that crystal ball, because if he commits somewhere else on April 7th,
I just put one in for USC.
I don't think that one's over.
I don't think it's over, but I'll flip it if I feel he's going to flip to Oklahoma. But I think he's committing to USC. What I was told tonight, feel pretty good about it, actually.
And when you say you feel pretty good about it, what you mean is you think he's committing to USC on April 7th.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I mean, there you go. And okay, we should probably, if you do expect Oklahoma to get Aaron Flowers' pledge on April 7th, tap the brakes on that, because USC does have the buzz right now. My line of thinking is, with as good of a player as that kid is, he's not one that, and also, like, you think about USC and all
Oklahoma
of
hasn't given up. They haven't given up.
Yeah, well, and I'm saying they won't, nor will USC likely be as attractive of a destination to a kid like Aaron Flowers as it is right now come October, November, if what we have come to
I actually
expect,
told the source just that exact same.
if what we've come to expect from an Alex Grinch defense is once again the reality for USC in 2023, yeah, I don't know that commitment sticks. So you know what? Yeah, he probably goes USC on April 7th. I'll take the hit on it, but I'm gonna hold out for the kid reopening things down the road, because he is an excellent football player. He is an incredible safety. And with as talented as he is, with as high as his ceiling is, if he's developed properly, I just can't really buy USC being the destination for a kid like that when push comes to shove and it's time to actually put pen to paper. So next commitment offensively and next commitment defensively. Oh, that's tough. I don't know if there's like an obvious candidate right now, if you're taking Michael Hawkins off the table. Let me tell you, I have a note here with my mock class, all the guys that I think are gonna pop in favor of Oklahoma. I will go defensively, Jaden Hardy, and offensively, I will say, okay, this might be cheating. Let's say it's one of two guys. Let's say there is a wide receiver that locks down their spot in this class. I think it will either be Josiah Martin, if he gets the offer, or I think it will be Isaiah McMorris.
I mean, I would, yeah. Hardy would be my guess at defense as well. Offense. I mean, I got asked this on the board in my chat, and I don't think he's going to be the first. But somebody said, next 3 commits on offense. I said, well, if Devon Mitchell decided he was going to reclassify here in the next 3 or 4 weeks, I could see that happening. So depending on Hawkins, obviously.
I think Devon Mitchell takes official visits before he decides.
I get that, but I also think officials or not, he probably would tell Oklahoma, in my opinion, behind the scenes, I'm going to take my officials, but you're good. The way things sit right now, as we know the buzz. And he's pretty open about it. He's not shy, saying that's the school that leads in a big way right now. But I guess, I mean, I could see Xavier Robinson popping out. and saying some things after the spring game in April. But I could also see, like you said, Josiah Martin. I don't know that he gets the offer, though. I just don't know that he gets an offer. I think that's probably the biggest hold up there. So I guess Xavier Robinson, maybe Caden Durham. I think he feels kind of close right now. Zion Kearney, maybe. I don't know. Like, those are the guys that feel like they're closer than others. So, and everybody wants to say, well, what about Wesco? What about Wesco? And that kid's going to take an official to Clemson. He's going to take an official to TCU, and he's going to take official to Oklahoma before he decides. I think at the end of the day, he ends up a Sooner. Just my gut. So, anyways, all right. That's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider Under the Visor YouTube Live. If you're not subscribed to this YouTube channel, please subscribe. Do content quite a bit on this channel. Oklahoma exclusive content, recruiting, team-oriented content. Pro Day is tomorrow. Parker and I will be at Pro Day along with Jesse Crittenden. And we will have that covered for you on OU Insider. VIP, I'll have some observations, behind the scenes stuff that you guys won't be public to a lot of people. So I'll have all that covered, and Parker will too, and Jesse. We'll have a live thread going for you guys on OU Insider VIP. So if you want to hop over and do $1 for the first month, $9.95 afterwards, or if you want to sign up for the whole year, I think it's 30% off right now. $75 gets you a whole year. OUinsider.com VIP. But yeah, that's going to do it. Hope you guys enjoyed this version of the OU Insider Under the Visor YouTube Live. For Parker Thune, for Spencer Forsythe, my name is Brandon Drumm. You guys have a blessed day.